how to massively reduce the stress on your next file. One of the things I notice about mortgage brokers is we care. At least the good ones do. We care a lot. And unfortunately, sometimes we care so much that it creates a lot of stress internally for us. And so I'm going to share with you a framework, a mindset tool that you can use to help reduce the stress you have on your next file. Something I actually learned from being a paramedic for 9 years. And I'm taking a clip from a podcast I recorded a few years ago. I had to listen to it. It's fantastic. It's short. And I break down for you exactly how to do this. But before I jump into that, first off, I'm Scott Pagford. This is the I Love Mortgage Brokering podcast. And this is our weekly 10-minute tactical show where I jump into a tactic or strategy or framework you can use to improve your mortgage business. And I just got to say, first off, thanks for listening to this. I absolutely love that I get to learn. I get to talk to lots of smart people. I get to share some of the ideas, and hopefully you find this useful. Before we jump into this episode, I want to give a shout out to our title sponsor, Finmo. Finmo is a Canadian mortgage application, document collection, submission platform designed specifically for Canadian borrowers. It's very easy to use. It's got cool features, smart docs. It knows what documents you need based on the application. It's got smart submission notes, pulls key data from the app so that your lenders get your answers quicker. And it's connected to Lender Spotlight. So it's a fantastic tool for searching rates and guidelines. Check them out at lendesk.com/Finmo. Okay, so I'm going to cut into this episode and just share with you this lesson that I learned from my days as a paramedic. Have a listen, and I'll come back. Hey, Broker Nation. Today I want to share with you the best advice I've ever received. And this is from a mentor. So some of you may or may not know, but prior to being in the mortgage business, I spent 9 years as a paramedic. So I've been mortgages for 16 years now, 9 years as a paramedic. And it was a fantastic career. Initially, when I was like 20 years old, I wanted to be a financial advisor. And so I took my Canadian securities course. And the problem was I looked like I was 15. And when you look 15, of course, I'm like, nobody in their right mind is going to give me their money, which is true. And so I decided, hey, why don't I do something different? And I had this opportunity to be a paramedic. And so I did. And I still look 15, but I reasoned that if I look 15 and I showed up as a paramedic and I look 15, there was no 912. They couldn't call and ask for someone else. And actually, I did have sometimes patients be like, are you the person helping me? And I've also had nurses that would give me a hard time about it as well. But in any case, I had this one guy that I work with named Glenn Wainman, and Glenn is an awesome guy. And so in the ambulance, he's called a unit chief, which is basically the boss of your station and your area. And I learned so much from Glenn. He's an amazing guy. And advice he's said to me, because, you as a paramedic, you get stressed. So you show up to a scene, there's an accident, it could be a heart attack, it could be anything and so it's very easy to take on that stress and then even worse, take that stress home with you. And then of course that affects your family and everything else. And so he saw me as a young guy who cared and was trying hard. And he sat me down one day and said, Scott, I got to give you some advice. It's important that you listen to this and that you apply this. And he said to me, you didn't cause the mess. You're just here to help. Always remember that. You didn't cause the car accident. You're just there to help. You didn't cause the person to fall off their roof. You didn't cause the person to have a heart attack or have a stroke. And, whatever the situation was, or, even worse, a suicide or a drunk driver or anything like this that were always, for me, the two that bothered me the most that seemed completely preventable were suicides and drunk drivers. But in any case, this mantra that I'd remind myself of is I didn't cause the mess. I didn't cause this. It doesn't mean that I don't care about the outcome, but I have to understand that I didn't cause this and I have to just do my part. And I used to watch those medical shows, so like the ER and these different shows, and I'd see how worked up the doctors would get over a patient and they'd be so emotionally attached to the outcome. And I got to be honest, when I worked in the ambulance, I didn't see that. I saw doctors and nurses who cared deeply, but they did not get emotionally attached to the outcome, because if they did, they'd be a wreck. Honestly, I think, that's TV. And TV, they act like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, if you did that, you would be emotionally drained after every shift. You'd probably be, you'd have to take drugs or have to self-medicate somehow in order to deal with the trauma of it. What I found is that people cared a lot, but they emotionally detached from the outcome, and they were able to do a better job of, staying rational, focusing on how to treat the patient. And so how does this apply to your mortgage business? Well, a couple of different ways. When you think about this, so, I found, at least initially when I became a mortgage broker, I actually found the mortgage business to be more stressful because I kind of had forgotten this. I always felt like it was my fault if a client did something stupid. Well, you can't fix stupid. So you can't always account for situations that clients are going to do. Now, you can give bad advice, and that is on you if you give bad advice, which is why I think, as a new mortgage broker, this is such a challenging career. And I have made every mistake imaginable since I've been in the mortgage business. And you can only learn at one mistake at a time in some cases. But in any case, so when you think about this, you didn't cause the mess, you're only here to help. So the first is you didn't cause somebody to write an offer $100,000 over asking without getting pre-approved, right? You're just there to help. So somebody does that, that's not on you.
you pre-qualify a client and you say, here's what you qualify for. And they come back and say, oh, this is what I got. You need to immediately, one of the important things to do is put that right back on their lap. Because if you take ownership of their problem, you're going to be stressing out, not sleeping, getting an ulcer, worrying about it. Instead, say, oh my gosh, somebody comes in, they write an offer 100K over asking, over what you qualified them for. And they say, hey, I'm hoping you can figure this out. Say, oh man, what was your plan? So put it back on them. So here's how I would do it. Hey, congratulations on getting an offer accepted. Looks like the purchase price is $100,000 over what we pre-approved you for. I'm just curious what your plan was for that extra 100K, right? Make them tell you. They're not going to have a plan. Okay, there's a chance. Oh, family's going to help me. Awesome. If they don't have a plan, this now becomes their problem. Okay, so as you know, we qualified you for this amount. You went over. So I can tell you, I'm going to do everything I can to get it done, but this is by no means guaranteed, right? Now, Mr. Customer, you need to do X, Y, and Z. If you want any chance of getting this approved for you, I need to immediately. So I'm not taking on the fact that they decided to do something stupid. Somebody comes into you and they got a 500 credit score and they really want to buy a place. You can feel empathy and you can be concerned for them, but that's not on you. You didn't cause them to miss payments or whatever the situation was that they had going on. You're just there to help. Own that. Or you get somebody who takes out a car loan in the middle of the pre-approval process and you find out halfway through. So again, this is not on you. This is on them. If they make these mistakes, you got to put this right back on their lap. Ask them how they're going to solve it, right? When you do that, the problem becomes theirs. Now you can work on the problem together, but don't you own the problem. Don't you take the problem on as oh my gosh, this is my bad. No. That client did something they shouldn't have done. So I see that you took out a car loan. Did you have a plan for this so that you could still qualify? Right? No, I didn't. Okay. So I'm going to immediately put the problem back onto them. Then I'm going to help them try to solve it. Sure, I'm not going to be it's not my problem, but I didn't cause that mess. So for me, this particular advice that I got from Glenn has been absolutely just invaluable for my mortgage business, for any business really, because it's so easy. It can be very stressful as a mortgage broker. It can be there's lots of things that can go wrong, as you know, and you do what you can to mitigate the potential challenges. But when it's 100% a client situation, you should not own the fact that they've done something wrong or done something stupid. You can still care for them and try to fix it, but don't own it. Because if you take ownership of it and it becomes your problem, they're going to bed at night not worrying about it. And you're stressing out trying to figure out, oh my gosh, how am I going to come up with this extra money? What am I going to do? Oh, no. Stop right there. Just like as a paramedic, if you do that as a paramedic, your career is very short because you will be stressed out and you'll have PTSD in no time. And it's the same thing as a mortgage broker. If you want this to be a long-term career, you can't take ownership of other people's bad choices. You can just make sure they understand the choices that they've made and then say, hey, but I'm here to help you. But in order for me to help you, here's what I need to do. And then start working towards a plan. And then if it doesn't work out, it's not on you, right? One of the other things that Glenn used to say to me is that unfortunately, sometimes people die. That's rule number one as a paramedic. And then rule number two, you can't do anything about rule number one. He'd say to me, Scott, you could have somebody who's in front of the best hospital in the country with the best team on at the time, the best ER docs and the best nurses, and that person can still pass away. And there's nothing anybody can do about it. So you just be okay, I'm going to do my part. I'm going to do my best, but I also can't control outcomes. And so hopefully you find that helpful. I know for me, that's been really helpful in terms of a mindset shift that I needed and I've had to use numerous times. So give it a try. Next time, write it down somewhere. You didn't cause the mess. You're just here to help. Thank you, Glenn, for being such an amazing mentor to me when I was a paramedic. And I don't think you realize I'm sure maybe you have, because he mentored a lot of new paramedics. I'm sure that a lot of them have reached out to him over the years, but you've definitely had a big impact on me. So I appreciate that, brother. And thanks again for listening to this episode.
Hey, thanks again for listening. And hopefully you got some ideas from that conversation or that I had for you. And, the biggest thing, as I remembered that listening to that, I was like, man, that totally reminded me of all the times that I would go to these crazy ambulance calls and the stress level could be through the roof. And you cared. I genuinely cared. But at the same time, it's I didn't cause this. I'm just here to help. And so the same thing, when your clients do something dumb, when they don't follow directions, put it back on them. And I love, what was your plan on this? That's a great question to ask when they do something like go out and get a car loan. And hey, just, congrats, but what was your plan for the car loan? When I qualified you, it was based on your current financial situation, as we talked about. This is a big change. And then they're going to be like, oh crap, I don't have a plan. And so instead of you scrambling behind the scenes and them sleeping at night like a baby, thinking everything's totally fine, you need to put the weight back on them. That doesn't mean you're not going to try to solve it, but you don't need to own their stress. One of the things that I learned from Denise that I love is that even in the front end of the conversations, one of the things she'll do is especially if it's a file that could go maybe A or B, depending on how it goes, she'll do a best case, worst case scenario. So it's like, okay, best case scenario, here's what it looks like. Worst case looks like this. So you've already told them up front, instead of all of a sudden you got a file that, that comes in and you're like, oh, it's going to be great. We're going to get you a good deal. And then all of a sudden you can't do it because of whatever reason. And now you're backpedaling, trying to, sell a solution they didn't want. But if you deal with it up front, you can actually eliminate that as well. So it's another way you can do that. Anyways, thanks again for listening. I hope you find this useful. If you are finding this show useful, please do me a favor. Go to Spotify, leave me a review. Spotify, we got a whole bunch of reviews on iTunes, but Spotify only added reviews not long ago. And so it'll be awesome if you could leave a review. I'd appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you on the next episode.